This episode is brought to you by Clearsense. Their highly scalable, cloud-based Clearsense data enablement platform unifies healthcare data, making it more valuable, accessible, and secure for improved outcomes. Revitalize your health system's data to improve care, accelerate research, drive innovation, and generate substantial application decommissioning cost savings. Visit thisweekhealth.com/clearsense today and learn how Clearsense can transform your organization.
Today on Newsday.
Before you get into all the advanced Tableau, Power BI, whatever visualization studio you like, or whatever tools and techniques you have in AI, you have to have the data right first. And it is so foundational.
My name is Bill Russell. I'm a former CIO for a 16 hospital system and creator of This Week Health, where we are dedicated to transforming healthcare one connection at a time. Newsday discusses the breaking news in healthcare with industry experts. Now, let's jump right in.
Hey everyone, I'm Drex DeFord. I'm a longtime healthcare CIO. This is Newsday. You expect to see Bill Russell here, but Bill's not here today. We did a little switcheroo. So I've got Newsday today, and with me today is Jason Rose, who's the CEO of Clearsense. Jason, I'm really glad you're on the show today.
Nice to meet you, Drex. Looking forward to the conversation.
We've got some really interesting articles you and I have conspired to talk about today. The first one's from MedCity News, and it's about providers and payers. The title of the article, Providers and Payers Are Increasing Their Tech Spend. Where are they investing the most? And I like that the article, as the cybersecurity guy here at This Week Health, I like that they say cybersecurity, but they also talk a lot about AI and the challenges that are coming with AI and the investments that are being made by health systems into AI. What are you seeing? You spend a lot of time with a lot of customers. What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I thought the article was fantastic as well. Really short article, just described some of the issues that obviously change healthcare and some of the cyber attack issues. A big one, but there's been really dozens of other ones that were also quite significant in recent past. So certainly cyber is on everyone's mindset. At the same time, AI is as well. And so if you think about those two issues, you could say well, maybe they're totally separate concerns, but there's one important underlying issue underneath both of them is they both include data and access to data and having good quality data, timely data, and secure data, those types of issues. Starting with cyber, when I have conversations with health systems and CIOs, CFOs, CISOs, et cetera, the entire C-suite, they're all concerned about cyber. And the reality is that which are the applications that are probably most at risk for a cyber attack? It's probably these homegrown applications or applications that have gone out of service, out of maintenance contracts. It's shadow IT, as we like to talk about in the IT world. It's all those applications that are often redundant. Some people call them zombie applications. When you think about exercises such as application rationalization, which I'm going to talk about here on this discussion, one of the side benefits of application rationalization processes where you actually execute on the app wrap exercise. You're not just putting it on the spreadsheet and putting it on the shelf to say, yeah, we should look at that. You actually do a pro app wrap process and you execute on it and you put governance in place to keep it maintained. You're going to reduce your cyber risk materially because there's less of a footprint. And at the same time, you're taking less of a footprint, meaning that you have less applications that are at risk just naturally. If you have 2,000 apps and now you have 1,500 apps, you have 500 less apps that could be at risk, just naturally speaking. Yeah. But you're also probably focusing on these enterprise applications that are more hardened and more built-in security and modern technology. And you're naturally going to get I'll call it the soft benefit until you actually get hit with a cyber attack. It's a soft benefit of an app wrap process.
Yeah, it's interesting because we have two articles today. The other one is from Forbes and it's called Don't Overlook IT Integrations During M&A Activity. And it talks a lot about app rationalization. There's definitely a Venn diagram between these two articles. On the AI side of the house, there's a lot of adoption apparently that will be centered around clinical workflow optimization. And so deploying tools that reduce administrative burden, all of that. As you alluded to, a lot of the times what happens is that there are data that are extracted from the operational systems like the EHR or other systems and moved into a data warehouse, or sometimes it's a spreadsheet, or sometimes we have citizen data scientists all over our healthcare organizations that are figuring out the best way to get their hands on the data so that they can do the things that they're trying to do to make workflow better. And that can be great, good for them, but also creates, as you said, from a cybersecurity perspective, but just from a data management and truth perspective, creates another whole problem, right?
Yeah, I was at a Chime event. It was a CEO luncheon at the Vive conference, and one of the CEOs asked a question to Stephanie Davis, who is the moderator of the event. She's a Wall Street analyst at Barclays. And the question was, how many of the AI companies on the exhibit floor downstairs do you think will actually still exist in a couple, 3 years from now? And so her answer was low single percent. And one of the points that she made, and actually I just spoke with her here in Nashville at the Nashville Healthcare Council Sessions Conference, because I'll be doing a panel with her later this year. And I brought this up to her. And one of the points that she made was, before you can have really good AI, you better have really strong, boring data management underneath
For
it.
sure.
And at work, I would say at best, like, you think about if you have timely data, so you have all the historical data, including archive data, you have the most recent data, you have complete data, meaning it's not some of the clinical systems, it's all the clinical systems. And then you have accurate data, meaning the data from the data source is identical to the data that is resident in this new cloud application that you revitalize this data for other purposes. If you don't have those three pieces in place, and that was my spin on it, is that timely, complete, and accuracy, so that you have a really strong foundation to enable good AI. And to me, that's the foundation. It's not sexy. It's a little boring. She called it, you better be a really strong, boring data management company first and foremost. But reality is that if you don't have that in place, you're really going to fail, or you're not going to be as optimal as you could be putting that foundation in place. And then that data enablement allows you to revitalize those data opportunities for other things. It's not just AI, it's also testing out new tools. It could be your visualizations in terms of all the reporting. It really empowers the business users to be able to have something that is timely, complete, and accurate, so that they can do other things now that they have the data without having to bother the IT group, the data scientists, all the analytics folks, if they just have it available to them. And I think that, to me, anytime I hear about an AI article or how AI is going to change the world, I always start with, okay, let's talk about timeliness, completeness, and accuracy on the data first. And then we can actually build the AI on top of that.
So right on the money. We have for years and years, from the beginning of the computer age, we've talked about garbage in, garbage out. If you don't have the foundation set, the other model I use in my head for this stuff and lots of other stuff all the time is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you don't have the data pool figured out and you don't have it set, you can do all the cool stuff you want at the top of that pyramid, and it really doesn't
Right.
matter because the data isn't set. So I
So
love your
I'm
pitch.
laughing because you just took a line out of my playbook. I've been using Maslow hierarchy. I actually have a bachelor's in psychology, and I decided obviously not to go down that path for lots of reasons. But I've been using the Maslow hierarchy of needs in my talk track for decades now. And I guess I'll parlay this to our conversation too. But if you don't have, you think about clinical quality outcomes or value-based care or all those things that we all strive to do as leaders in healthcare, if you don't just simply have things like, for patients, food, water, and shelter, Maslow hierarchy of needs, that allows you to get to the next level, which might be patient safety, might be access to care, and things of that nature. Such a good way to describe foundational areas. And you can take that same Maslow as you just did before you get into all the advanced Tableau, Power BI, whatever visualization studio you like, or whatever tools and techniques you have in AI. You have to have the data right first. And it is so foundational. I totally agree with that.
The other thing, so this helps bridges to the other article too, I think. If you don't have good data, a lot of the decisions that you make for the business can be inherently wrong because you're making those decisions based on faulty data. So the other article is about M&A and talks about app rationalization, where we've looped all the way back around and started there again. But when you do a merger and acquisition, I've done a bunch of them as a CIO. You're trying to put things together. You have a dream when you put the deal together that because of this consolidation, you're going to be able to save this much money and ultimately you're going to come out this far ahead because of the deal. It's harder than it looks, right? Especially on the data part.
Absolutely. And let's face it, the technologies are there to perform application rationalization. And we have a great technology. We take the data from the source data, we decommission the data, clinical, operational, financial, et cetera. We put it into our SaaS offering. We have great UIs and experience, including at the point of care when we build in to Epic the data from the last 20 years, as well as within the My Patient Chart, for example, also ERP systems. The technology is available, but I think one of the more important things to think about when you're doing a application rationalization program is scale and speed. Because when you're doing app wrap, particularly with an M&A, is there is some CFO or a team of CFOs who've sat down and on some spreadsheet it says synergies. And those synergies include cost takeout for technologies that are in this health system here that are superfluous to the acquiring parent organization. And so the challenge is that how do you overcome all the things that go into getting everyone agreeing to what applications will be shut down and when, and how fast can you go? And so we take the stances that we can, at Clearsense, we can scale from a few applications at a time, or we'll do literally dozens and dozens at a time concurrently so that we can scale to the speed of what the health system wants to do. The bigger challenge, though, is stakeholder engagement. It's not, these are not IT projects. And I used to be a CIO way back in the day as well. And it was always, these are business projects that may be led by IT, but you must have multidisciplinary, cross-departmental involvement in application rationalization because there's clinical care at stake, there's financial issues at stake, there's regulatory compliance and security. And so if you take the easy way, it ends up being a smaller project and versus a more of a permanent program governance of saying, these are the applications that we're always going to move. And there's a process of prioritizing, working with procurement on legal contracts of when we're going to shut these things down and go to read only, end user engagement, testing with new reports and merging disparate reports to new patient matching reports within the clinical point of care. Those are not easy things. And a lot of the things I just talked about wasn't even in the IT team. The IT team is getting the data extractions, data move, but naturally, whether it be procurement or IT, someone's got to lead that effort of multidisciplinary. Where we see projects fail or slow is that we don't have that multidisciplinary team that is actually going after a very rich ROI situation, whether it be the clinical ROI or the hard ROI, which is cost takeout. That CFO can say, last year on this spreadsheet, I was spending this much money on software licenses and maybe even some infrastructure spend too, maybe even FTE counts, or at least you can shift the FTEs to the next Epic or Workday implementation. But I no longer am spending that money here because it's now gone. And there's going to be a cost to the new vendor, but that is such a tiny fraction of what you're actually removing from your cost structure. And when there's an M&A activity, we have more sophisticated clients actually place Clearsense into the M&A area of IT. So whenever they do M&A, we are just a natural part of how the cost savings will be realized, which, oh, by the way, going back to the other article, reduces your cyber footprint and also probably gives you a better handle on using that data in a different way for AI or power visualizations or things like that.
That's interesting. People process technology. The technology actually turns out to be the easy part, as you said. The people process part is hard. Those projects, as you talked about, wind up being slowed down or maybe never happen at all because that people process burden winds up being put on the technology team and they just don't have the time and maybe the wherewithal, but they definitely don't have the time to corral all of those interested parties to figure out what and how and when we're going to do this cost takeout. So you guys actually parachute into these situations and handle that whole part of the business.
Yeah, it's a turnkey solution. We come in and we provide a governance, we provide a structure. If they want us to, we can actually handle all the data extractions as well. And then we put it into our SaaS. We guide the client health system along the way so they can maximize at the speed that they're willing to take. Because we can, again, we can do, I think most we've done is 40 or 45 applications currently at one point for,
Mm.
it was over a year. We did that with one particular client. But it's all about meeting the needs of the client and integrating within as an apparatus of part of the organization. It's funny, I'll just add one more
Yeah.
thing, Drex. So you're on a roll because it's the second time you're taking another item out of my talk track. I know this was 19 minutes ago. Another thing that I've been saying, and I've been saying this again for decades, is it's not people process technology. I think that's actually wrong, the ordering of it. And I wrote an article in Forbes about this a couple of years ago. What it really is, or it should be, it's process, technology, people. Because if you start with, I'm a process zealot. If you start with the process, what is the process? You lay out the process. Everyone agrees this is the current state situation. You have a future state design, but this is the current state. We're moving towards future state. Once you have that in place, then you layer on the technology to make it more effective and efficient. And you put the least number of people as possible to operate that process that you've just technologically improved. And I've always thought that it should be process technology people more than people process technology.
You're totally right. I'm a Toyota production lean guy too. I have been my whole life. This idea that you take and insert technology on top of bad processes and take a train wreck of a process and make it a really fast and efficient train wreck is a terrible idea. It's how we get into trouble a lot in information services. So I love your flow. I think that's a way better way of looking at it. Let me ask one other question and then we'll wrap this. But a lot of times organizations don't actually know all the things that they have. And so part of the app rationalization process is just figuring that out. How do you go about helping with that?
We'll start with the IT organizational leadership. Whether it be depending on the size organization, CDO to CIO, the head of applications, enterprise apps, things of that nature. We will usually like to immediately ask for either the finance area of the IT team, if they have one, or get with the finance team of the health system so that when we are helping them prioritize the applications that they are desiring to take out, is that we want to do a rough order of magnitude of what is the actual cost takeout. And so we've got different ways of working with clients to show that, whether we have a partner where we are going through a small exercise during our discovery process and saying, here's what we typically see in cost on these software licenses. These are like 1,000 different applications. It's not just, by the way, it's not just Cerner, it's not just Athena, not
Right.
just
It's 300 other applications that we're using. Yeah.
yeah, it is hundreds of applications. It's really getting a good like semblance of these are the applications that really have the best ROI on cost takeout. Or going back to the M&A article, the health system has Meditech and you have Epic. Those are natural yet, but what else do they have? There's a lot. In fact, if you go to each department, you start engaging, maybe not the first thing to do, but the second thing you might do is you might go to these departments and find out what are the other IT spend that they have inside those departments too. But to me, the finance team is the key because they're paying on the GL.
They
And
know
so,
where the big spend is. Yeah.
yeah, and there's a big spend and there's also a lot of small spends that you can tuck in with the big spend, because the big spend is going to get the ROI right away. But there's so many other, like hundreds. We have one client, it's a very large $20 billion health system, 26 states, and they had almost 7,500 applications. We've actually taken out over 10% of the applications. So it's the class recognized it as the largest application decommissioning that they've ever seen. And this is just in the last report from August, the largest installation of decommissioning they've ever seen before. And it's because it's cross-functional, it's scaled. We've got an ROI methodology that we work on with the client, and we know exactly what the cost takeout is. We know the prioritization, and the finance team is very much a part of that, as is procurement, legal, T security, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that's really, to me, you can shrink that to small regional hospitals as well, particularly those who are going through, there's lots of M&A happening, and those are the natural triggers or catalysts. But I venture to say, and I love your opinion on this, I'm going to switch the interview. I believe that at least 10% of the portfolios are bloated for health systems. And I've seen as high as 30%. And most of the health systems we work with, all frankly speaking, already have one of our competitors in place. And we call it archiving the archiver. It's just another line item. We just archive them too, because they typically aren't going to do the scale that Clearsense is going to focus on. They're projects, they begin and they end in a few months or a year. We're more longitudinal because there's always more bloatedness in this area. But so I'm just curious, is that a number that resonates with you at around 20, 30% of the application portfolio?
It may very well be. The other thing that you said that really rang true with me is that this isn't okay, we've done app rationalization, we're done. It is an ongoing thing because it's like everything else. If you don't water that garden and pull the weeds, there will be weeds that grow. New things will happen. People will find new ways to buy SaaS applications on
It's
a
a
credit
process,
card. And
right?
now suddenly you have the bloat again. So you have to stay on top of it. It has to be relentlessly attended to.
And the benefit is so huge. The benefit is, it's the Gartner called it the most hard ROI of any program that exists out there. They're really advancing their coverage of this area of application decommissioning. They call it legacy decommissioning. They're going to rename it to something else, but it's such a hard ROI. And then even the soft ROI of the clinical access at the point of care for the last 15 years of a patient, as well as the cyber areas we talked about, and then getting the data available so you can use it for other things like AI and visualizations and other tools you want to test out. It just makes such obvious sense.
Yeah, simpler is easier to operate. It's easier for the end users to use because they don't have to use 4 applications. Now they can just use one. Simpler is easier to secure. And ultimately, as you said, simpler frees up cash that allows the organization to go innovate on other things. That additional money for innovation doesn't just fall out of the sky. The
Right.
integration is actually required to generate the money needed for innovation.
And you think about the last 20 years, all the EHR stimulus, meaningful use, et cetera, there's a reason why these portfolios got so bloated. And I think that, and then you have the move towards Epic, the move towards Workday, and then the M&A. Those things are just creating this bubble that's bursting where the health systems are hurting for money. There's desire to do more innovative things, but there's so much money sitting there on the table right now. If they think strategically and focus on a broader based program, not a project, but a more of a programs are made up of a bunch of projects, right? And so instead of looking at it as a project, look at it as a program that you have in place that you're just relentlessly, using your words, Drex, focus on what's the biggest bang for your buck.
Jason, I could talk to you all day about this, but we're out of time. I really appreciate you being on. Jason Rose, the CEO of Clearsense. Thanks for being on Newsday today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Thanks for listening to Newsday. There's a lot happening in our industry, and while Newsday covers interesting stuff, another way to stay informed is by subscribing to our daily insights email, which delivers expertly curated health IT news straight to your inbox. Sign up at thisweekhealth.com/news. Thanks for listening. That's all for now.